Thanks very much for the opportunity to launch these guides, and it's a very special privilege to be here. I just wanted to, I'm Helen Anderson, and I've got a number of hats which I wear, so I'll tell you briefly about that in a moment. So I'm chair of Brands, I'm chair of Scion and MB's Building Advisory Panel, and all roads, I guess, have led me here. I'm also a seismologist, so I care passionately about how buildings deform, particularly in earthquakes. And I just want to mention how the need for the timber design guides really has come up in all my portfolios here. In the Building Advisory Panel, for instance, in the last year we've had two key areas of focus, and one of them has been more efficient consenting. Now, that's been a particular challenge in medium density housing, especially in residential, 3 stories plus buildings, and frankly, we haven't cracked it. But this is going to be one of the important areas that we all collectively have to crack to advance both government and also other residential construction agendas. And they live by the code that was exemplified by Alex Derek, who said that if the 19th century was the century of steel and the 20th century was the century of concrete, then the 21st century is about the century of engineered timber. So already we've heard from Kevin Golding actually that, concrete is dead, but maybe not quite. So at Brands, our great scientists there have, like Colleen Wade, who's been very involved in this particular guide, and has been working with Andy specifically on this particular fire design guide. People like that also, there's lots of people using evidence, impartial evidence, and I think this comes back to your point really pointedly, Andy. So it's very appropriate to be launching the first one on fire. And I was struck at a recent Prefab NZ CoLab conference where a speaker from the UK, you know how they beam in on videos nowadays, these speakers from the UK or wherever, he made several kind of offhand comments about the public and regulators being now very anxious about using wood at all because of post-Grenfell. Now that, I think, has to be challenged, and I think, again, noting your comments, Andy, I think if we let that kind of concern go unchallenged by impartial and evidence-based research, we will have lost so much of the potential that we see in engineered timber playing for New Zealand. And it has a key role, as we all know, because of its resilience. I love its seismic application, its flexibility, its contribution ministered to a low-carbon economy, and particularly for me in wearing a Scion role, its key role it can play in the circular bioeconomy. So it's not just what we put up, but when we bring it down and what it goes back into. So here we are at the first of the launch of 54 design guides. When I got some notes, there were only 50, so they seem to be expanding at a fair rate there, Andy. And I think the importance of these is that they're going to be providing up-to-date information for engineers, designers, architects, QSs, building consent and officials. So this is the very first important step to positioning New Zealand and the rest for the rest of the world so that we can meet that demand for climate-friendly buildings and products and new construction technologies and typologies. So I'd like to, today there's been quite a bit about the disaggregation of this industry. But I want to really herald this as a great success because I think what we should do is congratulate the impressive pan-industry group that's come together to make this happen. So all credit to you, Andy, your colleagues from WPMA, Forest Growers Levy Trust, the Timber Industry Federation, Timber Design Society, Brands, Scion and CGW Consulting, Andy. So getting such an effort across the whole supply chain is a great example of the industry stepping up to the challenge and meeting the great opportunity that is staring us in the face, which is that this is the century of engineered timber. Thank you.